Hello and welcome to the Wild Moon Sessions podcast. My name is Bexy and I am your host. In this episode, I'm talking to Matthew Smith, who is actually based in Ireland. Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Matt. I live on the west coast of Ireland and I work with landscape restoration, mostly with trees, for a charity called HomeTree. I met Bex whilst working on a community farm I set up back in 2012 with two friends. Her and her partner came at the kind of startup phase, and we had a blast together, kind of exploring food sovereignty, like land health, and community, and it was really fun to do that. I remember we'd been slogging away for a few years, and Bex and Patrick came and their friend Simon, and they made us a meal, and it was like the first meal anybody had ever made us there, and it was so special. It was this big kind of Spanish omelette with all the veggies from the field, and it was so beautiful. But I suppose my life has been centered around like ecology and the environmental movement, but it's kind of taken quite a few different strategies. And I suppose more than ever, there's a kind of a spiritual kind of thread that's woven through my understanding. Even though, on my first travels when I was 16, I picked up a book about the Buddha and was fascinated by it, but it just didn't land, and then fast forward a few years, I'd pick up another book and, like The Power of Now, and it just put me to sleep. But, then say 5 years ago, this stuff really started kind of landing for me, and there was a few kind of pivotal moments where I'd see the world in a different way and it would all make sense. So I suppose like in the right company, I'd say I was a kind of on the path like a bodhisattva, and in different company I'd say sure, I just love trees, and like how can we get more of them around. So maybe there's a bit of a chameleon there too.
That's an amazing chameleon though. I do want to say, for me, Matt, everything that you do is inherently spiritual, because everything with the land is so, and this is why I'm so excited to have you on the podcast near the harvest moon as well, because it's such a bountiful time of year, but and I only know that from obviously witnessing being on the farm and all of that harvesting that can go on around the harvest moon. But being and holding space and allowing space for land to be the most expressed, the most wild, the most fruitful. I actually think that that's deeply spiritual work, because ultimately we are made of earth, and we are earth. And I think that this is the thing that we can sometimes forget, I think it's one and the same. That chameleon in you is definitely one and the same. But that's why I was so excited to have you on the podcast at this time, because I really feel more than ever that, whether it's digital spaces, we've been in digital spaces for a while, but I think that whether it's digital spaces or coming together in community and all of this sort of stuff, the earth and the land always rejuvenates and revitalizes us and feeds us, literally. So I really, really would love for you to talk about your HomeTree work, Matt. I personally love this idea of rewilding. Well, it's not the idea, it's the actual tacit of doing it. You are a doer, and this is what I also love. It's like action, it's right action in progress and process. And it's such a lovely thing to even be a witness of, but also support and elevate it, and really, I love how important that is. So I'd love you to talk about that.
I do often talk all day about it, so it comes kind of easy. I suppose the work is in one way quite straightforward. We support people that haven't got the time or the money to connect with like regeneration of the land. So if someone has got lots of time, they can come and physically help. If they've got lots of money, they can financially contribute. And when I say they can come and physically help, it might not necessarily be digging holes and planting trees, but it could be that they offer their services. And HomeTree is a charity in Ireland. It's protected with the charity regulator, and we own 3 different sites across Ireland, and what we do is we're funded by the public and businesses, and sometimes the government, and we look at a piece of land, send an ecologist in, get a kind of basic assessment, decide to purchase it, send the ecologist back in, get a proper assessment, and then decide what needs to be done. And almost always there's some addition of trees. So we decide which trees in which place, and whatever will kind of most support the land. And, as the kind of plot thickens, we learn more and more about it, and how complex it is. And there's a great team here, like Mitch, who I also kind of co-founded the farm with. He's working now in HomeTree with me, and we spend a lot of time, actually on the land, the doing together, and then have some more of the team that'd be working more conceptually and kind of visioning, and then some people like deep in ecology and botany. And so like I'd be kind of pulling everybody together, but I do see that we're kind of just a group of people, even though we work in a kind of traditional structure. So we have a manager and a board, and we report like that, and then how in a way we're kind of collaborating with business and public to make this happen. So like I'm such a fan of the word like radically collaborating, but I don't think it's that radical. I think we do it in a kind of conventional way, even though I'd like to do it more radical. But traditionally people have like that would be really connected to the land, they might just kind of get stuck in their 5 acres and kind of leave it be. But I think that we're at this kind of place now where we can share a language. We have so many tools, like technological tools that we can learn, use to understand other people. So it's like now we have the tools to radically collaborate, where in the past maybe we had to just rely on like people having transcended their culture to connect with another, and then through that they can collaborate. But we've got so many tools, and we have a shared language with almost the whole world. So it's I think we've got enough tools to collaborate, and now it's kind of down to the human to make that happen.
Yeah, and that's what I love about you're talking about radical collaboration. I actually believe that any way to redistribute wealth into projects that actually nourish us, I think that is radical collaboration. That's actually taking your own inherent power and being able to invest it in people and projects. Because essentially what I really, people, projects, passion, but also something that's really grounded and rooted in what we actually need. We need air, we need food, we need nature. I mean, over the last couple of years, people know that more than ever, I feel now, that we absolutely need trees. We absolutely need to be able to walk out and enjoy our environment. And trees, for me, always hold me. And that's a really, however anybody wants to, look into that. There's a different atmosphere within trees, and they are deeply spiritual beings. I feel that around them. I get a sense of their ancientness, and their ancientness is far beyond ours. So for me, I think anything that rewilds and brings us back to trees and back to that purity of life, because that is our pure and basis. That's like our life basis, isn't it? The elements and food and water and the quality of all of these is so important in your life. So that's what I really love, because I think actually when I think about collaboration and community, we are at that point. And you're saying, I love the fact that you're saying we are at a point where anything can be done, really, in that sense.
Like it feels like that sometimes, and then like other times I'm just like, Jesus, we're so far away from kind of moving towards a more ecological or more holistic culture. And I suppose a few things happened for me personally in the last kind of 5 years, that when I was farming, I'd be literally working myself blood and sweat and to the bone. And we were working so hard, and maybe experienced a bit of burnout, but also started inquiring about the challenges that we were facing. And from what I understood was there isn't really so much we can do to stop, pretty huge, climate shifts. And then in that, my process was like, okay, well, regardless of, the why, the kind of scientific why, I like to see more trees and eat healthy food. So I'm still going to continue this path, but it has to be contributing to my well-being, and there has to be a space for health and growth and family and these kind of things. So I did kind of take a shift, and part of that was reading the deep adaptation paper by Jem Bindell, and seeing that we're going to have to adapt to a changing climate, and he gave a kind of framework to support that, and that really helped me to kind of grieve the fact that there's a lot of people are going to be affected, billions of people are going to be affected, and our kind of governments are going to have a particular position, and I spent a year processing that, and there was a lot of sadness, and I think that that's made me more resilient in the kind of changing times, like the pandemic. Although there was kind of slight differences in my life, like I was ready for it to come, and because I'd done a year of processing back in 2017 around the climate change and what a pandemic of might look like, and things like that. So we were kind of ready. I also had a child in the middle of it, so we were locked down anyway. We had a baby at home, and he was healthy and happy, and we just felt a lot of gratitude, and kind of coming back to the work at HomeTree, because that's what you asked. I think people reach out because they have a longing to connect with nature, and they want to gift nature love in some way, like everybody does. Who doesn't? And everybody has this kind of different ways of expressing that, and some people want to contribute time or money, or they want to just sit in connection with it, or so I hope we can be there to facilitate that. And the irony is, like, we kind of, when I first started HomeTree in 2015, my kind of sensational headline was like, look around you, there's no trees, from this kind of windy hill in West Clare. And it is true, like, Ireland has a very low coverage of native woodland. But as I more and more have worked specifically with trees, I actually see they're kind of everywhere, and they're really ready to bounce back. And yet still I don't look at the granular. Still, I'm mad for the kind of sensational, like that. Let's get 1,000 hectares. Let's get €1 million. That's just kind of so kind of masculine and linear that I forget that I can actually just go and sit under this beautiful whitethorn that's in that seeds are out now. So that's the irony, is I use these kind of mad strategies to get me into the granular, but often I miss them by looking for sensational stuff.
But I actually also love that, though, Matt, that you're so like, let's get €1 million, let's do that. Because actually it's it's that kind of radicalness to be able to even just having that in your head means that it's possible. Like, everything's possible, isn't it? So it's also just knowing what you want to aim high, and you want to make a big difference, and you want to bring like all of those values absolutely match up with that. And that's what I really enjoy about what you've just said. Also, the paper that you were talking about, that sounds really fascinating. And I think that your courage, that's a massive amount of courage to actually meet that head on, process that, digest it, and then always return to your passion and realize that what you're doing is just as valid now as it was before.
That when I read that stuff, Jem was a kind of UN scientist, like, couldn't be more educated. He worked in the field his whole life. He took a sabbatical to kind of try and understand, collate all of the different papers that were being published. And what he came up with is like, there's actually not much we can do about climate change, and it's going to be crazy in one way or the other, and it might, the worst case, it might be extinction. And I actually kind of coincidentally met him, and and I was like, but what about all of the trees that we're planting? What about regenerative agriculture? What about holistic, planned grazing and holistic management? And he was like, just read the paper, like, I'll talk about it, even if a quarter of the world's farmers started doing regenerative agriculture right now, it's too late. And there's like 1% of the world's farmers doing that. So it's like, why then? I'm not preparing for the future. I'm not even trying to be resilient for the future. We might have a few, community farms here, there, and everywhere, but like if the people running them haven't done any kind of process work around, what's actually going to happen when the government shut borders, or when a couple of billion people try and move north and south, it's like they're kind of not really ready, and that was just my own journey in it. So everything seemed to not matter, and like ironically at the same time, or kind of running alongside of it, was like the other kind of spiritual work that I was doing with nonviolent communication and meditation, and having a really felt sense of kind of oneness from time to time. I'm not talking about 10 minutes a day. I'm talking about like half a minute once a week, where I just totally felt connected to all things, where none of the words that I'm saying are even relevant. None of the concepts I've ever had are relevant, because I'm actually in it. So to spend time in that space is actually, everything kind of melts away. Everything just becomes like a noise that you don't understand.
And I think that's really actually profound, because they feel like two polar opposites, what you're describing, this like deep process and then this kind of oneness, I'm not going to say but, they're kind of the same, aren't they? They're all, everything's the same. It's just how, because what I find really courageous and about what you've just said is the fact that, and this is often what people can't actually process, is the fact that, yes, the human race might become extinct. The earth will carry on.
Sure.
And I think that this is the scary bit of its literal possible mortality of the entire, or a lot of humanity. And when you were talking about resilience, inner resilience or inner care, or the ability to be able to process whatever is in front of you, that's a huge skill, isn't it? And I think
it's so skillful. And I'm not deluded that like I don't do it loads of the time. Like this year's been really busy, and I like to be able to cope with it. I let myself revert back to really old coping mechanisms, like TV, overeating, shitty foods, like not crazy stuff, but like I hadn't drunk for 4 years, and then I was having a beer each night after work because I was just needed a way to turn off. So I'm not saying that I'm like this kind of in any way superhuman that knows how to deal with stuff like it's a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, no, but I think that the honesty about it, I think we all have the capacity. I mean, I'm exactly the same. Sometimes I just need to eat shitty food and just sloth in front of the TV. Sometimes that's absolutely necessary. And when you have that honesty and sort of transparency, there's no ego around everything else, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, there is and there isn't, because the ego is so kind of like cunning that it can hide in that kind of, oh yeah, but I'm aware and I'm honest about my overeating, and then it's just like slithering around somewhere else, and I think that going back to that kind of process stuff and saying that I have processed the the end of the world or my own mortality, like that's also not true. That like I carry a kind of still a daily grief around about the state of the earth and about the way in which I show up, and all of the kind of here and now, and maybe like old stuff too. So I'm not kind of processing things as they happen. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, I'm out the door. I'm going to busy myself today because I find a lot of meaning in my work, and I can see positive action, and there's completion in some of my tasks, so I can kind of feel great about the day. So I noticed that I'm quite good at kind of highlining stuff and not being specific in the work that I do. So if you want to kind of be specific in your questions, I can do it there. But I knew that me and you would do this. Would be like half the work, I don't know how many people would actually be able to follow our conversation, because we're just dancing around.
Oh,
and
no,
because you know me,
good.
you know as well. You know me, and we're touching on old stuff rather than meeting.
Oh no, it's all good, because I love the conversation actually, Matt, because when you're talking about actually going out and completing tasks and things like that, like in the last 5 years for me, I know that that's inherently good for you, because that's a form of biohacking that gives you like a hormonal boost that makes you feel like, it's also because it's not making you feel better. I'm not saying
Sure.
I'm not saying that's a reason to do all of these things, but biohacking is actually an amazing thing to be able to help you emotionally regulate and know how you can do that. And I actually think that if we can stay in that kind of more emotionally regulated state, we're less likely to react and create more maybe more issues essentially from the reaction. And that's kind of what I see is that I see a lot of reaction in the world. I don't see a lot of moving from truth. And that's kind of why I appreciate the action. Action is, because I read a quote by Marcus Aurelius yesterday, which was essentially, I can't remember the exact words, but it was about just be a good guy, just be a good woman. All you have to do is turn up and do it. That's it. There's no complication in that. It's just like, do it. and I think that life can be as simple as that. It really, really can. But being able to know how to look after yourself and know that your action has purpose, and know that actually, if that's feeding you, it's going to feed somebody else. I actually think that that's humanity, isn't it? That's how we connect with one another. It's how we kind of elevate our consciousness and also the state of our world. That's like a massive massive thing. And I don't think, I'll be honest, there's gurus and there's all of this sort of stuff, but actually I don't think anybody is absolutely there. It's always a process. And I personally think that with each day we have a new experience, whether that's planting trees, whether that's collaborating with people, and actually each experience brings out different parts of us, and that's the process of being a human, right? That's what we're here for. So for me, bringing real passion, real truth to all of that, so the truth that lies within you, and bringing that out with people, that's where the magic is, the action of doing truth, for whatever reason. So I do love that. I would never profess to be an enlightened being that has no more work in any way to do, because I just don't believe that's that's also not a goal for me. I love my humanness. I love to be human, and I love to be able to experience that. And actually, the one thing that I always come back to is what makes us human, which is the elements and nature. And that's why I want to always be able to support people like you, Matt, who are bringing people together to actually center your life around something that actually physically is very real. And when I think about wealth, I actually think that is wealth and abundance.
No, you're right. And I agree, really. It's not how I experience it, but ultimately I agree with you.
Sometimes it's easier to be on the outside and see it, because I think that this is also to be able to bring people together, but also to have community that's based in nature. Actually, you're creating a community that you're holding space in a way that you don't even know. And that's where this becomes a different, it's almost the physical is this, and then all of the impacts and how it actually radiates out is
I feel that a lot of the time in the work that I'm doing. I'm like, Jesus, if we could just see that we're just moving our arms around and making noise, but there's all this other special stuff happening as well, I see that, and it's really sweet. I just love the people that come and connect with me, and I suppose a longing would be to support kind of less privileged people connected to the work that we do, would be to be able to support, whole nations that have less privilege. Like, I feel like, Ireland is one of the richest countries in the world, and it's well and good us saying, help us, restore Ireland's landscape, help us do that, when, Ireland has so many landowners that, have access to so much wealth. And then there's other countries where there's, one or two landowners, or, and they can't even contribute to it because they don't have a euro for a tree or the time to plant one. So I do see like that I'm a privileged guy living in a privileged world, and that's there too, and I hope to kind of amend that, in a point in my life soon, and even if HomeTree can support that kind of shift as well, I'd put that to the board. And there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of fun to be had. And, like you say, like living in the human too, and can we not have a blast doing the hard work? As long as the hard work isn't a coping mechanism, because, especially in Ireland and all parts of the world, kind of overworking and success is not considered a coping mechanism or an addiction. It's considered like something to celebrate. And one of the hardest things for me to do is to slow down. I was recently at a vipassana center, and I was there to do 10 days of silence. And I've done it before, and I know that day 5 can blow people to bits. And this time I was day 5, and I was just like absolutely like blown to smithereens. And I was like, I'm out of here, and I left. And that was because it was too difficult for me to sit with my longing to be with my son, and maybe underneath that was the emotions that I wasn't ready to deal with. And I'm not an emotional wreck. I'm a pretty normal guy, and I think sitting still and doing nothing is so difficult, and so rewarding as well.
No, that's a huge mirror for me actually, Matt, because I think especially with the kind of energy that's out there in the world now, everything's just like a constant stream of consciousness as well, isn't it? So it's like knowing how you impact. It's actually coming back to like your own life and being able to know how you impact your own moments and feel empowered in that, rather than try to fit in with this stream of consciousness or busyness or success. I mean, I totally relate to that. I went to like the most prestigious art school in the world and ran myself ragged for 2 years, and then came out the other end and went, oh my God, what was that? And I have constantly needed other people to work for, and to, this kind of, this idea of success and being successful and having a reputation, and it's all just layers of ego. And when you peel that back, you realize that actually you have this hugely passionate core. You have these moments with people that are absolutely priceless, and you can build something that is truly authentic for you. And I don't know how I would be in Vipassana. I don't know how I would manage that, because I've not actually done one. This is the second time this has come up on this podcast. Actually, great.
Interesting. It's not for everyone, and I'm fairly extroverted, so that's my challenge, and then for some maybe more introverted people, their challenge is to, go and, speak up when it doesn't feel comfortable, or something like that. So like one of my takeaways from it, which is I recently had a son, and I kind of fell in love with him, and underneath my daily actions and my kind of feelings is this attachment that I can kind of I wasn't actually aware of. I mean, I could conceptually get that I was attached to him, but I didn't have a felt sense of it. And so I was in there, and kind of day 4 started to, the meditations were sweet, and you're sitting on the mat for kind of 14-15 hours a day. It's strict. Like, if you leave the room, someone comes in and says like, what's up? So on the kind of the off times where I was taking a walk, I was just having a lot of, just missing him a lot, and kind of having a nice cry, and but a few, rewind a few months, and my kind of one of my stories that I was running around telling people was like, when people have a baby, like all of a sudden their life can shift, and they get the job they want, or they end up kind of buying a house when they never thought it was possible, and that must be because the baby's like supporting them live from an open-hearted place, and they've cracked, they're all of a sudden these people are really compassionate because their heart's wide open, and they just turn into these like super sweet human beings. And then, but coupled alongside of that is this deep attachment that, of course, it's like, it's animal for us to be attached, and it's natural for us to be attached because we, basically look after this baby and we support the human race going on. But this attachment that we're unaware of, that runs alongside this kind of heart open, compassionate, this newly heart open, compassionate being, is coupled with like a deep attachment that even with, showing it awareness and consciousness, we can't shift. So I had to bail at this vipassana because I was so attached, but the past one that I did, I was totally fine. So it's just like, even though I'm living from this heart open place, I'm also living from this like attached place where I'm not living in the moment, because underneath my, love and kindness and wanting to be with him is this like, this deep attachment that I can't shift. So that was good for me to realize, because I was just running around thinking, I've got a baby, I'm enlightened, or not enlightened, obviously, but I've got a baby, I'm sweet, I'm just going to be this heart open guy now,
Yeah, interesting. That's really interesting. What I did want to ask you, Matt, you talking about like attachment and that sort of stuff. Do you think that it's an issue that we aren't attached to the land? Do you think that we don't, the fact that, I'm not saying that people aren't, but sure, I'm trying to kind of gauge, like, if we had that attachment to land and attachment to conservation from an emotional point of view, and I'm not saying that people don't, but more in a more broad sense, in a bigger way. And I mean also in our personal psyche, being able to know that we are that, so that we will protect it. Do you think that would help bring people?
Like, I think that, there is a longing in people to connect more with the land, and I think that it would support the land if people were more invested in it. But the psyche stuff, I think that we just don't have, like, totally generally speaking, I don't know what 8 billion people feel or think, but generally speaking, I don't think that we're aware of how attachment lives in us, or I don't think we're aware of how aversion lives in us. And that's the kind of vipassana, the teaching is like, if you can connect on an experiential level, moment to moment, what an attachment feels like, a nice sensation in the body, and what an aversion feels like, a non-nice sensation in the body, then we can know attachment and aversion from a like in the body, in experience. Then when we have it in the outer world, we know what it feels like, and we can decide to live, our authentic path through that. But like people connecting with the land, like I don't know anyone that goes to the beach and has a shitty time. I don't know anyone that goes to the woods and has a shitty time, like, so we are all connected to it. And I think our job is to enjoy where we're living and how we're living, and to feel, for me, I really connect with meaning and contribution. So that's why I like this kind of work. But if like, I don't need everybody to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, but that's a really beautiful thing to actually come to a close on that, Matt, because I think just the knowing, actually celebrating your life can radiate out so much positivity and joy that you can inspire other people to do that too. And if, like you say, the earth is part of that, we are part of earth. I'm really, I would love to get you back to talk about more stuff with Matt, because obviously we could really talk for hours.
And I think that I kind of like divert from speaking about the specifics of what HomeTree does and what we did at Moyhill, and is because you can just go on the website and have a look. I could regurgitate kind of paragraphs I wrote 10 years ago, but that's not gonna, let's talk about the kind of human stuff instead. And I'm not a specialist either. I'm really a generalist, so I kind of stay away from talking about specifics.
Yeah, no, I understand, but you're the glue also, which is important. It's important to be the glue.
Yeah.
I have to say that in the last couple of years, I've deepened my. I've become a shamanic practitioner, and I've deepened that kind of practice. And I've realised that so much of our medicine comes from our experience of being in this body and on this earth, and that's a deeply spiritual thing in and of itself, rather than, you know, things outside of ourselves. And that's something that I want to constantly come back to and celebrate. And actually, I think that being able to do that in community and being the glue that brings people together to make things happen, that's deeply spiritual. You know, everything is. And if it is within us and it is on this earth, it is. And I really challenge and encourage people to actually celebrate that within themselves, because that's how we really elevate with one another, you know.
I take that away for sure.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on, Matt. It's been magical and wonderful as always. And thank you for listening. I really appreciate your time. If you want to get in touch with Matt, how's the best way to get in touch with you?
Personally, it's to send me a text. 087 705 9979, or just through HomeTree.
Okay, cool.
My personal Instagram.
Okay, so I'll pop those on the link below. You can press subscribe, and you can actually support this podcast on Patreon to support projects like Matt's in the coming months and years. So come create some gorgeous human community with me and with all of these beautiful people too. And sending you so much love for your day. Thank you so much for your time. Take care of you.
See ya.